Welcome to this evening's Public Insights lecture. My name is Sally Shortall. I co-chair the Public Insights Committee and I'm a professor here in Newcastle University. I'm very pleased to welcome you to tonight's lecture, which will be given by Marc Jobst, and it's titled, What's the Story? The Job of Directing Character-Led Action Films. I will be back after the lecture for a live Q&A with Marc. If you would like to ask a question, use the drop-down chat box in the YouTube, or you can tweet us at InsightsNCL. If you'd like to chat about the lecture while it's going on, please use hashtag InsightsNCL. Here to introduce Marc more fully and roundly is our Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost, Professor Julie Sanders. So enjoy the lecture and I will see you afterwards for the live Q&A.
Hello, I'm Julie Sanders and I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost at Newcastle University, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to welcome our Insights lecturer this evening, who is Marc Jobst. Marc is an independent director with some fantastic credits, including several films for Marvel and Netflix, including Daredevil, The Punisher, and Luke Cage. He was also responsible for the brilliant Tin Star with Tim Roth for Amazon Sky, Hannibal with Lawrence Fishburne for NBC, and more recently Berlin Station for Paramount. Marc's family moved from Zimbabwe to London when he was a young boy, but he definitely inherited a wonderful kind of dual economy of skills, as it were, from his parents. Marc's father was a cattle rancher, his mother was an artist, and you can see this wonderful physical creativity throughout his career choices. He came to Newcastle University to study agriculture, but he tells us that one of the reasons he chose Newcastle as a site to study that degree was because he knew that the Royal Shakespeare Company at that time had a 3-month residency at the Theatre Royal. So that wonderful combination of the physicality and practicality of farming and agriculture, but always that theatre creative practice at the heart of Marc's experience. And he graduated very successfully with a BSc in agriculture from our university in 1983. He talks really eloquently actually about this wonderful mix of the embodiment of physical theatre rehearsals and improvisation and the physicality of farming. And I love that combination. And it's taken Marc around the world, from the beautiful landscapes of Northumberland to the Rocky Mountains to, of course, the veldt of Zimbabwe. Marc was in Newcastle in a coal mining region in the 1980s during the sort of political heat of the miners' strikes. And I think the work that he and other students were engaged on then can be reflected, I hope, in the values-led work that Newcastle University is doing around social and environmental justice right up to the present day. Marc went on to form the Three Monkeys Theatre Company, who did some really wonderful kind of barefoot creativity, as I call it, working with schools, particularly focusing on young people with learning disabilities in their engagement and audience outreach. He got his real break into television through that farming connection, doing some early work on a programme with Tyne Tees, and then moving into the BBC's Country File programme. It's a great career, and we're so excited to have Marc with us to talk a little bit about his work in film this evening. The title of the Insights lecture is called What's the Story? The Job of Directing Character-Led Actor Films. And I, for one, am really looking forward to it. I'm really grateful to have Marc back with Newcastle University through this Insights virtual lecture. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and talk to you all. It's a very strange situation that we're all in, and I'd far rather we could all be together and that I could face you and you could see me in the flesh, and we could share questions and answers, and this incredible journey that we make when we make a film and when we make television, and we all appreciate it as consumers of film and television. So it's a slightly odd way of having to work with you, not being able to see you all, but let me do my best. My method of working is usually very interactive and very tactile, and I like to be able to see people. So let's just get on with it and see how we go with it. What is a director? It's a really interesting and complicated role, because I think one of the things that we come to when we think of being a director is there's so much baggage about what a director is and who a director is and how they work and what they do. And as in the Insights quote that I put in there, Billy Wilder says, a director must be a policeman, a midwife, a psychoanalyst, a sycophant, and a bastard. So Billy Wilder, made Some Like It Hot. He made The Apartment. He made Sunset Boulevard. I mean, extraordinary, fantastic, phenomenal films which he wrote and directed. So he knows a thing or two about it. But before we can really look at those claims, let's just interrogate what it actually means to be a director and to direct live action drama. Alfred Hitchcock said to make a good film, you need three things: the script, and the script. And I find that to be absolutely true. The picture that I've had here is the front pages of two scripts that I directed. One was for Hannibal, which was an NBC thing with Mads Mikkelsen and Lawrence Fishburne and Gillian Anderson. And then on the other side is an episode of Daredevil, codenamed Ringside. Everything is codenamed in the Marvel universe because you get all these geeks who are just wanting to find out wherever you are and photograph you and then put it onto the internet and ruin the story. The reason why I wanted you to see these pages, because this is where it all starts. As a director, you get sent a script, and that front page is the promise that when you turn the page, the story begins. And every time you get sent a script, you start with enormous hope, enormous expectation and excitement, that you hope that the first page will want you to read the second page and take you all the way through to the 60 pages or the 90 pages if it's a feature film script. So you read it, first of all, you read it as a story. You just read the script, and you have to teach yourself that, because as a director, you're immediately thinking of pictures and images and how you do it. But you have to really learn to just pick up that script and read it as a story. The second time you read it as a film. How does it look? How does it feel? What's the rhythm of it? And then the third time you read it, you start to read it as a director. How do I break this down? What are the character journeys? And that's when we start to really begin to look at what it means to be a director. And if I show you the next picture, which is an amazing photograph from the Edward Steichen Family of Man exhibition, groundbreaking exhibition of work from 1955 that followed man's journey from birth through to death. And I remember as a boy looking at this picture. It was in a book that my mum and dad had. And I poured myself into this image. I poured myself into all those people sitting around the fire and this man telling the story. What was the story? Once upon a time in the bush of Africa, an old lion, lame and limping, dragged himself across the veldt to a mapani tree to lie in the shade. And behind it was a little boy who woke up and he screamed. And you're there, you're with it. Or for us more, maybe it's like once upon a time in a deep, dark forest, two little kids hold hands and they run deeper and darker into the forest, lonely, abandoned as children, lost. And we're there once upon a time. That's essentially what it is. We are directors, as storytellers. that's what we do. And that is important to me because stories matter. Why? Because stories teach us how to be human. We walk in the shoes of the characters for the journey of the story, going through the dilemmas and the decision-making that they go through. And it leads us, when it's told well, it leads us into our own imaginations about how would I cope? How would I deal with this situation? If I was the little boy behind the mapani tree, how would I deal with this old injured lion? Or if I'm the kids lost in the forest, how do I deal it? Or if I'm the prince who wants to become a king, but first I've got to slay the dragon. Good storytelling leads you in. So I think stories really matter, and they've lasted for so long, and you can always slip off the shoes at the end of the story if you don't like it, or you can keep them on and walk a little bit and work out your own decision making. So in novels, it's very easy. We just can write the word, and the words are descriptive, and they lead you into your imagination. In theatre, where I started, it's easier too. All you have in theatre is a wide shot. You have a stage, you have some actors, you have a little bit of a set, and if the story is well told on the stage, then the audience will suspend their disbelief and they'll go with you where you want them to go. You can hold up the watering can, you can pour the watering can, you can say, this is the Niagara Falls, and the audience will believe it. You can't do that in film. And in film, you have to go to a location. This was a scene that I shot for the finale of The Witcher. This is a castle in Poland. We had to charter aeroplanes to fly the entire crew over to Poland to shoot this. We had to hire hotels. We had to have catering. We had to bring all the costumes and the costume designers and the actors. And then we had to bring the cranes in and all that, just to tell the story. You have to have, again, this is on The Witcher, this is now in Hungary. We have to have makeup designers. We have to have costumes, we have to have extras, we have to have the prosthetics team who are doing the arrow through the head. We have to have studio space to create the story, because what we're doing needs to be so real. This was, again, the beginning of the finale episode. This is a boat. We had to build this tank. We had to waterproof the tank in the studio, put water in it, put everybody in the tank, put some silks all around so that we could then cut out the boat from the water. And then you have somebody who is here on the side there with a barrel, and he makes the water work like that so that there's some movement to the boat. That's an expensive piece of kit. Here, this was the big fight sequence for the opening episode, the pilot episode of The Witcher. Now, this is, a graphic photograph where we have the stunt coordinator on the left, Wolfgang, who choreographed this extraordinary sword fight, which we'll come to later on. But this floor, we had the most torrential rain for the entire shoot, actually. And because the fight sequence was so complex, and I'll show you some of that a bit later on, Henry and the stunt team couldn't get a grip on the ground, so we had to dig out 3 foot of this set and lay sand and gravel and soil in order for there to be grip so that the rain would drain out. That's all because it's a film. We can't do what you can in the theatre. We have to have stunt people who are willing to be hung on wires. These are actual people, and a crane. And of course, the tower there is a set that was built. We had to build that set. It had to be safe so that you could have people on there and a crew, and that so we could do the wire stunt to throw them off it. And then we need actors. These amazing people, these noble, wonderful vehicles for the emotions that we're trying to tell in the story. And we have to create a space with a crew of people. Sometimes on a crew, we have 200 people, for them to be able to go into the center of this space and do sometimes extraordinarily intimate, revealing performances. And so with all that mechanics around it, we have to have these great people who I love because they're willing to make themselves so vulnerable. So we need all that machinery. We need all that kit just to tell a story in film. there's another thing which I think, for me in particular, matters greatly. And that's about how do we engage an audience actively in film. If we have to give them so much because of the reality of filmmaking, if we have to give them a castle, if we have to give them a tower and a crane and all that sort of stuff, if we have to do all that for them, how do we stop an audience from just sitting back and watching the story? I go back to what I said before. Stories are important. They teach us how to be human, but we get the most out of that if we can actively engage an audience in the storytelling, in the character's journey. And I put this picture up here because this is from a beautiful film called, I'm just about to run out of battery, I realize. I'm so sorry. 1 second. I'm so sorry about that. We have to draw an audience in to the storytelling. And what I want to do is just show you a scene here. This is from Berlin Station. It's a spy thriller that I made for Epix and Paramount. It's between two people, Nina, who is a Russian spy, unbeknownst to Kirsch. Kirsch is a CIA agent, and he is having an affair with her, and he thinks that she's a spy, but he doesn't know. So the scene between these two people is simply two people in a room trying to find out about each other. Kirsch is having a bit of a breakdown, and he sees her and he's questioning her for the first time. Robert, I'm no spy. I don't even know what that means. I'm just trying to make sense of last week. You said your job was stressed, and yet I'm the problem, your neighbor. What is it? What that I've done? My watch. There was a thing I was doing, and a signal was sent when my watch was stopped. Your watch stopped. It was stopped. So I just show you that because as a director, how would you shoot that scene? It's two people in a room. The traditional way is you have a wide shot, and then you have two singles, and then you can cut between those three shots at its simplest. But really what you need to do is you need to say, well, okay, what is this scene about? And how can I, as a director, convey the subtext of the scene? So if I just shoot those three shots, when I get into the cutting room, I'm the person who then dictates what the audience sees. But this is two people who are trying to find out about each other. They're trying to work each other out. There's a discovery. And what I didn't want to do is impose upon this scene a cut that makes it feel like the scene knows where it's going. Neither of these two people know what the next moment is going to be, and they're finding out about each other. And in a spy thriller, it's all about suspicion. So as a director, I have to kind of honor that genre and honor the tone of that scene. Let me show you how I shot it and see whether that makes any sense.
Robert, I'm no spy. I don't even know what that means in this day and age.
No, don't. Just stop. Give me a second. I'm trying to make sense of things here.
You said your job has you stressed. And yet I'm the problem, your neighbor? What have I done?
My watch. There was this thing that I was doing, and a signal was sent when my watch was stopped.
Your watch stopped.
It was stopped! It was a deliberate act. The crown was bent.
I don't understand. Did it make you late to something important?
No. A message was sent to a man to open his veins.
I think you should leave.
Why?
So this is all one shot still.
Yes, I do have to get to work. I opened my door to you because you were in trouble.
Where do you work, anyway? Exactly.
He's trying to find out.
Charité Mitte, Pediatrics.
Yeah, and if I were to call there right now, would somebody confirm that Nina Bartek or Sadowski or whatever the hell your name is works there?
Of course they will confirm it. And if not, it's because of the privacy policy.
Right.
I've just started there last week.
It's good. It's good.
Take your hand off my door.
No, you tell me the truth and I will.
So now the camera goes into her. It's his point of view.
My name is Nina Bartek. I'm the doctor from Gdańsk. I love helping people. I hate salmon.
So the camera comes around and we find
My
him,
mother
but we
wants
don't
me
throw
to
our
talk
focus to
more
him.
and
We
meet
keep him
nice
soft because he's befuddled in his head.
people. When I told her about you, how fun you are, how you talk so fast and look so handsome in a suit, she said that maybe I don't have to get out more. Maybe what I need is across the hall. And I was stupid enough to think that maybe she was right.
Now the camera's coming round back to him. The cameraman wants the focus puller to bring focus forward, but he doesn't. So what the cameraman does now over here is he comes round onto him to tell the focus puller, now bring my focus here.
Just go home, Robert.
Like I said, I have a paranoid streak. But it doesn't mean I'm wrong.
That's the first cut.
We're not going anywhere.
So the decision was to shoot that entire scene in one shot to try to convey to an audience the subtext of the scene, which is that neither of them know precisely what's going on, who's who they are to each other, and who they're representing. And I felt that was a more honest way of conveying the subtext to that story. A single shot is really effective, but it's not the only way of doing it. Sometimes you can use the cut to great effect to convey the subtext of a scene. And I want to show you this little scene that I shot for a film called Sleep With Me, which was an adaptation of a novel by Joanna Briscoe. And it's about a couple, Adrian Lester on the left and Jodie May, who is playing his partner, and she becomes pregnant. And Adrian kind of freaks at the responsibility of being a dad. And into this couple come this other lady, played by Anna Marinka here on the right-hand side, who has a past with the lady and called Lelia. And she begins to insinuate her way into the couple's life and starts an affair with him and starts an affair with her. And here she is quite early on in this, playing a bit of a game. But here you'll see how I think we can use the cut to make the decision as a director to interpret the inner state of what's going on.
Sometimes when I've been around
So we have a two-shot here,
not speaking to anyone,
the two of them
it starts to feel
together.
as if I'm not really there, you know? I feel like a ghost. I can say these things to you.
You're not a ghost. You're real. Sylvie, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you.
I have thought about you too.
All one shot.
It is going to snow, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, I think it is. Oh, look,
This is his girlfriend's best friend.
Well, I just... Katrin! Hi!
The cuts of the music are giving the agitation in his mind.
Lily? Lily? Shit. Okay. Look. There was something very stupid. Silly. Something very stupid. It was just. Oh, it's hopeless. Okay. Hey.
What's the matter? Are you okay?
Look, let's get married.
So it's a completely different way of approaching a scene. You're using juxtaposition of kind of pace and change to articulate what's going on inside his mind. It's his point of view. You start with a two shot, it's all nice and gentle, the two of them come together, bam, he makes a big mistake, you cut it like crazy, you put this incredible music on it, which kind of creates agitation, and then that allows you the contrast of the silence and the stillness of whatever's going to happen next is going to happen, and I'm going to have to deal with it. Of course, there are so many different ways as a director, and that's what we're exploring, decisions that you have to make to try to articulate as much as you can to a scene. We're always thinking about how can I add to a scene? How can I take what's written on the page and not just shoot the scene, but identify what the scene is to all the various different characters, and then support it and add to it. We use different lenses. We use long lenses or we short lenses. We use wide lenses or we use very narrow lenses. We can have close-ups or we can have wide shots. We can move the camera slowly as we did in that one there. You can go handheld. You can keep the shot still. You can use focus to be in and out of focus, to call the audience in. And all these are decisions that you have to make at the script stage. Here's another way. This is the opening to one of the Daredevil episodes that I shot, where I use a lot of focus and location to try to link a backstory. Daredevil is blind. He was blinded as a boy. And when he was blinded, he was taken to a convent. And Catholicism becomes a very big, important theme in Daredevil's life. I wanted to try and link those two themes together. And this was the opening scene that we shot for series 2. It's all out of focus. We don't know why. But it's calling you in somehow. And then this boy comes in and he's in focus, so it's his point of view.
Don't get up.
And then here we have, baptismal water, Catholic imagery. And then the sparkle on the ceiling, which was mirrors in a bucket of water, which we put some light on to shine up onto the ceiling. Again, his point of view, the focus very foreground, so we see the cross. This is now, we're imagining he's seeing this. And now I need to make a turn as I come into reality. And we jib down. And here in this black bit here, we do a dissolve to a camera move, which is now somewhere else. And linking us to Daredevil in the present day. We think he's lying down. The camera twists through 90 degrees. And now we're getting a sense of location. He's on a chimney, so we know we're high. And then we see the tower blocks. We realize, oh, well, he's high up on a roof somewhere. And then we find the antagonist, which is the Punisher. So I've linked the Catholic imagery at the beginning as a child to now, the present day. And this then becomes an episode.
Morning sunshine.
With the brilliant John Bernthal, it becomes an episode about revenge and redemption, which, you know, obviously ties in Catholic themes. And the two of them play out Punisher's belief in revenge and Daredevil's belief in redemption. So how does that apply to action? And do we apply the same kinds of themes to action? Well, yes, we do. And equally, there are certain things we have to do differently. Action is very technical. The camera has to be in the right position because these people don't really punch each other. You have to put the camera in the right place so that it looks like the punch is being landed. But equally, in action, and one of the things that I think is most important, the way that I tend to approach action, is through character and story. Action in itself doesn't really interest me unless it's developing story or unless it's developing character. And I remember one time when I was shooting Daredevil in New York, and I was in a cafe chatting to some people, and they were talking about Daredevil with me, and they said, oh yeah, those action bits, we just fast forward all the action stuff. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Have you any idea how much work is involved in making those action sequences? But it was also a really important lesson to me, because it meant that if you can fast forward an action sequence and be at the same place as you were at the beginning, then what's the point of the action? It's like a song in a musical. If the song doesn't develop the story or the character, why have the song? So action has to develop story and character, so that if you then fast forward it and you get to the end of it, you think, well, oh my God, he's changed somehow. I've got to go back and watch the action sequence in order to understand that. This is the big fight sequence in the pilot episode of The Witcher. And I want to show you this just very quickly as a last little bit of decision making, because the first part of the sequence, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's another guy around the corner. There are 9 people. And the Witcher has to fight these 9 people. It's the first time we really see him fight, other than in the very opening with a monster. But this is when he first fights people. I wanted to do this as a single shot because I wanted to say, this man, the Witcher, Henry Cavill, is dangerous. Be very careful. Because I know that after this, immediately after this, comes another fight sequence with a sword against Renfrey, who is the woman he's just made love to that night. Now, if the entire sequence is lots of cuts and people fighting each other, swords and all this sort of stuff, it's tiring to watch. So the story I'm telling at the beginning here is to say, I'm doing this in a single shot. So because this man can do this and because he's dangerous, and by the way, Henry Cavill could do this in a single shot. You don't always have that with actors. And obviously when we shot this, we shot it with a half sword, and then we added the full sword into the film in visual effects afterwards. But here is the single shot, and that gives you a sense of his power.
Fuck.
Cut. Getting it all up. here we are. This is where it starts. It's very much him. Still with him. We shot this at 96 frames per second in super slow motion, so we can slow down those moments. This is the final bit. No more. All one shot, and then it cuts. So that's the first bit, setting up the man as being a real formidable swordsman and a formidable fighter, and be very careful. The second bit of the fight, is with Renfrey. Renfrey is the woman he's just slept with. He's opened his heart. The Witcher is notoriously closed because he's damaged. He doesn't open his heart to anybody, but he did to this woman. And now she's becoming his antagonist. So having seen how dangerous he's going to be, we're sort of saying to ourselves, don't fight him because you will lose. And I wanted this part of the fight sequence to be really intimate. I didn't want it just to be more sword fighting. I wanted them to share intimacy. It's almost as if they could kiss or they could kill each other. And this was where I wanted to then use cuts.
Magic doesn't work on me. Silver does, though.
Silver is for monsters. If we cross swords,
I won't be able to stop.
For the first stop, the intimacy.
They created me just as they created you. We're not so different.
And she uses it to stab him. All the time he's sort of saying to her with these stops, is that it? Is that enough already? She's playing for real, and now this is a proper sword fighting, with proper big swords. So he wins, and now he thinks she's going to back down. So the point about showing you those two little bits is that the first one, we don't really know any of those men that he's fighting. We haven't really invested in any of them. So the point about that fight sequence is to show that the Witcher is formidable. The second part is much more intimate. We know her, we've met her, we've invested in her, we've invested in them. So therefore I want to have much more control as to the balance of the fight sequence. So we use cuts for that. There's more that I could show you. I think we're going to run out of time.
Magic.
Are we going to run out of time?
Well,
the creative part of being a director is all the decision making around that, around how we shoot the subtext of a scene, how we create the inner story of a character. And there are times where we can sometimes use the camera to tell a second story. And in this clip from The Criminal Justice, we have Maxine Peake, who is playing a character who had stabbed her husband, and we knew she'd stabbed her husband, but we didn't know why, and she wouldn't say. And this was in the final episode. She's been questioned in the courtroom over days now. She's tired and she's about to confess. And in this cross-questioning sequence, it felt to me interesting to go into her inner life, even while the scene was taking place outside it. So, and it was a little controversial scene, this, because we had a lot of debate in the cutting room as to whether it worked and whether we should have just stayed with the two characters in the cross-questioning. But I'll show it to you and show you what I was trying to do, which is to take you deep into her point of view whilst the scene is progressing.
Well, she told us she heard Joe say that he loved you. So you can't both be right, can you? So I'm going to ask you again, is your daughter a liar?
No.
No, it doesn't fit with your story, does it? Your claim to victimhood doesn't fit with a husband who tells you he loves you moments before you stab him. I'm going to come back to what happened in the bedroom, but first I want to ask you about afterwards. You went downstairs.
Yes.
Put a coat on.
I thought I might be cold.
You thought you might be cold. And all the while Joe was lying bleeding upstairs. Did you think he was going to die?
That's why I came to the hospital.
An hour and a half later, yes. Where'd you been?
I'd been walking in the park. I didn't know what to do.
Did you think about Ella and what she might be doing?
Do a little dissolve here.
You don't understand.
I understand that you left your 13-year-old daughter alone with her grievously wounded father. Did Joe see the knife you brought into bed with you?
No.
Her sound is
Why
much
not? It
closer.
had a 7-inch blade.
I'd hidden it.
And was hiding the knife something you thought about doing while you were sitting in the chair in the bedroom all that time?
I suppose so.
So there was nothing spontaneous about your actions, was there? Everything you did was a calculated decision. God knows you took your time, Juliet Miller.
No, that...
Not easy maneuvering yourself in bed to get the force needed to drive the knife into the body so hard that it stays there. How did you do that?
I can't explain.
Then why don't you show us?
No.
Why not?
I was just so frightened.
You keep telling us about being frightened and the danger you supposed yourself to be in.
Why didn't you leave? Why come back upstairs? Why not walk out the door? Was anybody stopping you? Why not leave when you were sitting in the bedroom all that time, thinking that Joe was asleep? So many opportunities to just walk away.
I had nowhere to go.
The park, the police station, the Rose House.
And what would I have said?
You mean it would have been awkward? Embarrassing?
So you chose sticking a knife in your husband's abdomen over social embarrassment.
I don't know if it works. I don't know what you think, whether it works. It felt to me like I just wanted to be inside her head, seeing what she was seeing sort of her life, as it were, laid out in front of her, in front of all those lawyers and those barristers and all the rest of it. But it's part of the creative decision making that we have as a director. And how do we then make that? How do we actually do it? Because we have to motivate a team of people, sometimes, hundreds of people in a crew. The shooting days are 12-hour days. For many people, it's much longer. For the costume department, the makeup department, the assistant director department, the electrical department, they start 2 hours before we start shooting at 7. So they're 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're always the last people to clear up. So if it's a 12-hour day and we finish shooting at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock with lunch, they don't leave until 10. That's a tremendous amount of energy that they have to commit to this. And we have to do it in a time scale. Every day on the set on a big set costs $250,000. So you have to complete your schedule within the time that you're allotted. We have to make something which gives you a return investment as well. So those people who are putting the money in, you get money back out of the film because it's successful. And I suppose what it makes me feel like, going back to and completing our talk here, is that it's not really just a director that must be a policeman, a midwife, a psychoanalyst, a sycophant, and a bastard. It's any leader, isn't it? We have to work within a timescale. We have to work within a budget. We have to motivate our crew. We have to get our crew to believe in us and believe in the vision that we have for something. And we have to drive it through within a certain timescale. So we're not that much different, but we have to make the process of what we do is different. But in terms of leadership, I think it's the same.
Marc, thank you for a really fascinating talk. I really loved it. I have to say my nerves are shot. I'm not sure whether it's The Witcher or you nearly running out of power during your lecture.
Oh, do you know what? I just love it. It's live stuff is great, you know. It keeps you on the seat of your pants, and apologies for that. I had no idea I had no battery on my computer, but my dear son came running up with the chargers. So
yeah, no, I was reassured before the lecture when you said that you thrive on things going wrong, because I thought it's fine, he'll be okay. So I'm going to go straight to some questions. So Darren wants to know, how do you go about creating a short list for each scene? Do you know what you are reading this? Do you know when you are reading the script, how you want to shoot it?
No. And very often, well, it's a really interesting question. I always write down my very first thoughts, because those instincts are very often the best, because they're just instinctive. I think it's really, really worth interrogating those decisions many times over, because what we do as a director, what we have to know is we have to read a script for story, then we have to read the script for each character, because we need to know that character journey, that we can tell each character's journey throughout the story that we're telling. So you might have instinctive reactions to how you want to shoot a scene, but once you start placing that piece of the jigsaw in the whole jigsaw, you realize that actually I need to rebalance that scene slightly, because the journey of the character within that scene needs to fit the journey of that character later on. And my first reaction hadn't accommodated that.
Very good. Here's a question from Lizzie, which is something I wondered as well. She asks, how involved are you in the sound design? And I wondered that as well. The music is such an integral part of the whole...
Oh, do you know what? Thank you for asking that question. I spent 6 years in radio, working, writing and directing radio drama for Radio 4, radio and comedy and documentaries and features and all the rest of it. Sound is incredibly important. It's so good that somebody's brought that up. Sound is so, usually I'll always start from the point of view of saying, what's wrong with silence? And you build from that. And obviously what you can do with sound, it's the juxtaposition of opposites. If you have sound, you can take sound away. If you don't have sound, you can add sound, but you have to have that manipulation. And very often I'll have a soundtrack in mind when I'm shooting a film. That was Arvo Part that we were using in the last one, the Criminal Justice. We used Arvo Part, and then a brilliant composer called Dan Jones, who composed, very much around the Arvo Part. But sound is so important. Again, in that Criminal Justice clip, the last clip that I showed you, in my original cut, in my original sound design, it was much more extreme. I went very much into her sound. So her sound came up very much closer on mic. And the barrister who was questioning her became further and further away. So he was there because I just wanted to really get the sense that actually it doesn't really matter what he's asking her anymore. We're beyond that, We've had this cross-questioning for, 4 hours or whatever it is, But when we got into the cutting room, we had those creative conversations, and we felt like on balance that the shot was doing so much of that work anyway, that we didn't need to overemphasize it with sound because it was then making it too weighted, really.
Great, thank you. Now, this sounds like a question from a techie, and I have to say to U Kank Shah, if I've just completely mangled your name, I apologize. And here's the question, it's long. So, action sequences can involve very technical blocking and camera work, and the choreography of a fight is typically designed by a stunt coordinator, which reflects how a character moves and thinks. In this setting, how do you, as a director, ensure that those action scenes push the story and a specific character forward and aren't simply generic and flashy? Or in other words, how do you ensure that every action sequence is unique from others?
Great question. Hey, these are really good questions, guys. Thank you. It's a really good question, and it's a question that needs to be asked time and time and time and time again when you do action. I'm just about to shoot a really big new action adventure show again, where I'm talking to the writers every time. I'm saying, what's this action sequence about? Why are we having an action sequence now? What story is it telling us? But to answer your question, for example, in the Witcher fight sequence with Wolfgang Stegemann, he and I had coffee together, and we were shooting in Budapest. And he said, so Wolfie and Wade, who is another choreographer who came from South Africa, and they're Tom Cruise's stunt coordinators, and they designed all the fight sequences in Mission Impossible. And so Henry had worked with him in the last Mission Impossible film, and Henry said, I would love to bring them in to shoot this really, really important fight sequence. So they came over from LA and from Italy and from South Africa, and we sat down, we had coffee together. And Wolfie said to me, so what do you want from this fight sequence? And we talked about story and we talked about character first. And I said, I'm a character director. I come from theatre. I love story. What matters to me is what happens to these characters, not how well they fight or how well we shoot the fight. So what we need to do is let's go through this sequence and say, what are the story points? And Wolfie and Wade, being the brilliant stunt choreographers that they are, get it. They absolutely get it. Some stunt coordinators don't. Some just want to do really great flashy fight sequences because they want to show themselves off. And I've done a few of those too. But they understand that you have to go for story first. So as a director, you give them free rein to say, go and develop something brilliant, but brilliant around this. These are the story points. These are two people, Renfrey and The Witcher, who have just made love. The last thing he wants to do is get into a fight with her. And yet she really wants to fight him. And that means there's something about her character that's interesting and intriguing. But he has to discover that in the course of the fight. And that's why we develop these stop points. in the fight. You know, if it was just one long sword fight, you'd never get the intimacy. You'd never get the moment to look in the eyes and see them looking at each other, and him saying to her, "Is that it now? Are we going to stop now? Can we stop doing this?" And her looking at him and saying, "I'm going to kill you." And then it gets to the end, to the final denouement. So you have to sit down with your coordinators, and then when they show you, because they work with their stunt team to show you in the dojo, you come in as a director into the dojo, you have a look to see what they prepared, and then you have to say, it's too much. I'm not getting the story. Talk me through what it is that you're trying to achieve, and let me see if I can help you land that. And then you have to work with your camera operators. And on this fight sequence, we brought in a camera operator from the UK to work with the stunt team for 2 weeks, just rehearsing the camera moves around the fight sequence in order to get it as a single shot. And he had to be as much of a dancer as Henry was a swordsman, because he has to work around them, you know. And, you know, they rehearsed that for 5 weeks.
Wow. Okay, here's a question from Kelsey. When approaching a shoot, how do you balance your preparation process with on-set spontaneity? Are there certain aspects of a shoot, camera angles, interpreting the script, where you usually lean more heavily on either prep work or organic movements on set?
Yeah, well, when I first started directing, I held everything really tightly. I controlled everything really tightly, because you're worried that you're not going to get what you want. And gradually, the more confident you get, the more you can let it go. I had an incident with a very famous actress that I was working with, who, on my first day, I was going to have 6 weeks shooting with her. And it was a Friday night, it was 6 o'clock in the evening. We were due to wrap at 7. Commuter traffic was coming back. We were shooting in London on a council estate. And the crew was late. We only had an hour to shoot the scene, which is not enough time. And we did a line run of the scene by a gate leading up to the house. And I said to these two actors, well, that seems to be working pretty well here. Shall we shoot it here? And she went at me. She was absolutely furious. She said, well, you completely shut this down now. Oh, it seems to be working well here. In other words, you want to shoot it here, never mind what I want to do, and all the rest of it. And this was all in front of the crew, and it was getting late and the clock was ticking. So I backed off and said, look, absolutely not. It seemed to be working here, so that was fine for me if it worked for you. If it doesn't, we'll play it the way that you want to play it. Show me what you want to do. So they reblocked it as they wanted to do it, and they blocked it in a way where the only way I could shoot it was to get a camera in the garden next door, shooting across the hedge, and a camera in the other garden, shooting across the hedge and that way. And I didn't have permission to put my cameras there. And it was, you know, time was ticking. We had to get this scene done. So I said, okay, well, we'll shoot it like that. And my first assistant director came up to me and said, we haven't got permission to put the cameras in there. We can't shoot it like that, you know. And I said, look, pull out the 50 quids. And if somebody comes along, you pay them off, because I've got 6 weeks with this actress. I'm not going to not do what she wants to do. We got the scene. Nobody came up. We didn't have to put any 50 quids out, fortunately. But it taught me a really interesting lesson, which is prepare everything. Prepare really, really well. It's like decorating a room. The more you prepare, the easier the paint goes on. But be willing to let it go. Because an actor might come into a scene and do something phenomenal. And because you're over-controlling, you're over-prepared, you don't see it.
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
What you have to do, just the other side of that, if you're doing a lot of visual effects stuff on green screens, then you need to be quite precise in how you shoot something.
Okay, great. So the last question is going to go to Sophie, who wants you to tell us about how you made the move from studying agriculture to film and TV.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane, isn't it? And if there's one thing that I can say to everybody, look, we can do whatever we want to do if we have a passion to do it. There is no straight route to doing what you want to do. We kind of wiggle around and we pursue the things. My dad always used to say to me, my dad was a cowboy, and I was born in Africa, and I used to do cattle ranching and learned how to wrangle cows because my dad taught me how to do that. But I loved stories, and Dad, bless him, used to say to me, follow the fire in your belly. And there came a time in my life where the fire in my belly, which I found in Newcastle with the Royal Shakespeare Company and at the Gulbenkian Studio and the Playhouse as it was then, was to tell stories. And I had to sit down with Dad and say, Dad, I can't be a cattle breeder. I can't be a cowboy. I want to tell stories. And so your passion begins to lead you. And again, a bit like when you get onto a set, if you don't hold it too tight, but if you just hold the idea of wanting to be a storyteller a little lightly, then you start to see things that are opportunities that you follow that gradually begin to lead you into the place where you can express yourself. If you hold it too tight, I'm going to be a film director, like that, it might be tougher.
Well, Marc, all I can say is for all of us, we're very glad you did follow the fire in your belly because you're a fantastic storyteller.
Thank you.
Marc Jobst, thank you very much for joining us tonight and giving us our Public Insights lecture. It was fantastic and the questions were wonderful. And if it was normal times, you'd now be hearing the ringing applause.
Oh, well, I wish I could see you all. I wish we could talk some more, and apologies for the minor interlude in there, which is hopefully an opportunity for you to get a coffee or something.
So thank you again.
Great pleasure.
And thank you to you, all our audience, for tuning in. Our next talk is the 16th of March, next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. And then Professor Andrew Thompson will be talking about why we need the arts and humanities to help us tame the tiger of the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence. So we hope you can join us again, and good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening.